Hey everyone, welcome back. We talk a lot about professional learning communities, PLCs, on this show, and for good reason, right? They have the potential to be absolute game changers in schools.
Absolutely. When they're firing on all cylinders, PLCs can really make a difference.
Well, let's be honest, sometimes those PLC meetings, they can feel a little, I don't know.
Like going through the motions?
Yeah, like everyone's showing up, but that spark, that collaborative energy that really translates into meaningful changes in the classroom, it's just not quite there.
You're preaching to the choir. It's so common, and it can be so frustrating.
So today we're diving deep into how to turn those just another meeting PLCs into engines of real change. And to guide us on this deep dive, we're turning to, drumroll please, an article from Juniper Consulting called Recalibrating PLCs for a Successful School Year.
Juniper Consulting, they do some fantastic work with schools, so you know they've got their fingers on the pulse of what's really going on.
Exactly. And this article, it's aimed at school leaders, but honestly, the insights here are pure gold for anyone who wants to see their school's PLCs thrive. Because let's face it, we all have a stake in this game.
100%. So let's jump in. What's the first thing we need to know to start breathing some life back into our PLCs?
Well, the article jumps right in with this idea of recalibration, and I love that because it's not about scrapping everything and starting from scratch. It's more like, hitting the reset button, taking a step back and saying, okay, how do we fine-tune this thing?
Right, because we all know that feeling, right? The meetings happen, but that real impact, that tangible change in our practice, it's just not materializing.
And the article really nails it when they say, and I'm quoting here, teachers show up, but the energy and collaboration aren't translating into meaningful instructional changes. Yeah. It's like, ouch, that hurts. But also, yep, that's us sometimes.
It's so true. And, often the missing ingredient isn't that teachers are apathetic or resistant to change. Not at all.
It's more about...
It's often a lack of alignment. It's when the activities and the structure of the PLC don't actually match the real needs and motivations of the teachers. That's when you get that going through the motions feeling.
Oh, that's such a good point. It's like having a top-of-the-line espresso machine, but only ever using it to heat water.
Right.
All that potential just sitting there.
Exactly. And that's why this whole idea of recalibration is so important. It's about taking stock of where you are, figuring out where you want to go, and then making sure your PLC is actually equipped to get you there.
So it's strategic, it's intentional.
Absolutely. And one of the things this article really stresses is that before you can even think about solutions, you need a deep understanding of where your PLCs stand right now.
Okay, so kind of like a taking inventory kind of thing.
Exactly. They call it a needs analysis, but honestly, it's less about checking boxes on a form and more about really understanding the health of your PLC, just like a doctor would before prescribing any kind of treatment.
I love that analogy. So it's about diagnosing before you prescribe.
Precisely. And this is where things get really interesting because the article digs into 3 key areas that often get overlooked in this whole PLC needs analysis process, and they are knowledge, skills, and this one is so crucial, motivation.
Okay, so we're talking about what teachers know, what they could do with what they know, and then their drive to actually do it.
You got it. And that last one, motivation, that's often the missing piece of the puzzle.
So we're talking about figuring out teachers' needs when it comes to PLCs. How do we actually do that? Like, what does a needs analysis actually look like in practice?
Right, because it can't just be about sending out a survey asking, on a scale of 1 to 5, how's your PLC doing? We've all been there, filled out those surveys, and nothing really changes.
Exactly. So the article talks about this idea of like really digging into the data, but not just any data, right?
Yeah. It's about going deeper than those surface level feedback forms. One of the things this article emphasizes is actually digging into past PLC materials, which I thought was so interesting.
Like meeting notes, agendas, things like that.
Exactly. Meeting notes, action plans from those meetings, anything that gives you a window into what was actually happening in those PLCs, they're gold mines of information.
Because you can see what was actually discussed, what decisions were made, how engaged people really were the teachers' ideas actually incorporated.
Oh, and were there any follow-throughs on those amazing brainstorming sessions that we all know happen in PLCs? Because sometimes those ideas just kind of disappear.
And that's where the real insights emerge. You start to get a sense of if the PLC is a space where teachers feel heard, where they feel valued, or if it's more about just, checking boxes and moving on. Because if teachers don't see the value in the PLCs, if they feel like their voices aren't being heard, well, then it's no wonder that the motivation starts to, dwindle a bit.
Absolutely. It's all connected. And that's actually where this article shifts gears from this whole needs analysis piece to then, okay, what do we do with this information? How do we turn this data into actual meaningful change? And they give a really practical framework, which I appreciated.
Ooh, I love a good framework.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is it?
Okay, so they break it down into 3 key areas that school leaders should focus on based on the needs that they've identified. And I really appreciate that this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's very much based on what you uncover through that needs analysis.
Okay, so it's tailored, customized to your school's specific context. Music to my ears. So what's the first key area?
The first one, and this one might seem obvious, but I think it's often overlooked, is collaboration and trust.
Okay, that makes sense. It's the foundation of any effective team, right?
Exactly. PLCs are no different. The article stresses how important it is for PLCs to be a safe space, for teachers to be vulnerable, to share their struggles, to learn from each other. It can't be about judgment. It can't be about competition.
Let's do that Brene Brown quote, right?
Yeah.
Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. And that takes trust.
So well said. And when you have that foundation of trust, that's when the real magic of collaboration can happen. That's when teachers feel comfortable taking risks, sharing ideas, and really digging into the messy work of improving their practice.
So collaboration and trust, check. What's the next key area we need to focus on?
The second one, and this one often gets missed, is motivation.
Oh, motivation. Because you can have the best laid plans, the most brilliant strategies in the world, but if teachers aren't motivated to engage with it, it's all for nothing.
100%.
Yeah.
And here's the key. The article goes beyond those really surface-level motivators. We're not just talking about bonuses or extra days off.
Yeah.
It delves into this idea of intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic motivation meaning that internal drive to do something because it's personally rewarding, right?
Exactly. It's about helping teachers connect to the why of their work in the PLC. How does this directly translate to positive outcomes for their students?
It's about helping them see the impact of their efforts, connecting the dots. Because teachers, let's be honest, we are incredibly dedicated. We're also incredibly busy. We need to know that what we're doing matters, that it's making a difference for our students.
Absolutely. And that, my friend, brings us to the third and final key area the article highlights: skills and knowledge development.
Ah, yes. The nuts and bolts of effective teaching. Tell me more about this one.
Well, the article makes this really important point that we can't just assume everyone comes to a PLC with the same skill set. Some teachers might need support with data analysis. Others might need help facilitating those tough conversations. Some might need a refresher on different instructional strategies. It's about meeting teachers where they are.
So it's not about a one-size-fits-all professional development approach. It's about providing a more personalized menu of options that cater to the individual needs of the teachers in that PLC.
You got it. It's about empowering teachers with the specific skills and knowledge they need to feel confident and successful in their PLC work.
This is all fantastic stuff, really practical, really insightful. But before we wrap things up, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. How do we make sure all of this actually sticks? How do we make these changes last? We'll dive into that right after a quick break.
And we are back. You know, we've talked a lot about breathing new life into PLCs,
We really have.
but it's got me thinking, how do we make sure these changes we discussed,
Yes.
how do we make sure those actually stick? How do we make them last?
You're hitting on a really important point. Like, it's not enough to just have this amazing recalibrated PLC for
Right.
a month and then everyone goes back to their old habits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The article actually uses the word sustainability a lot, and I think that's where school leadership really comes in.
Okay, so it's not just about launching those recalibrated PLCs. It's about creating a whole environment
Yes.
where those PLCs can actually, grow.
Thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about shifting the whole school mindset so that PLCs aren't just seen as this, extra thing that we do,
Right.
but they're woven into the fabric of the school's DNA.
I love that. Okay, so how do we actually make that happen?
Yes.
What are some concrete things
Sure.
the school leaders can do?
Well, one thing the article mentioned that I thought was interesting was actually weaving PLC work into the school day
Okay.
instead of it being like an add-on. Oh, it's 4 o'clock, now it's PLC time.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Dedicating time for it during the regular school day.
That makes so much sense because it's like you're saying this matters.
Yes.
This is a valuable use of our time. It sends a really powerful message, not just to the teachers, but I'm thinking
Absolutely. To students, to parents.
everyone. This is part of what we do.
It's part of the culture.
Yes.
And I think it's important to remember, too, that it's not enough to just,
Right.
carve out the time. Score leaders really need to be those visible champions for PLCs.
Walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. Provide those resources, offer encouragement, be active participants in the process themselves.
Be a part of a PLC.
Yes, model that.
I love it. And, celebrate those successes along the way. Because when teachers feel like their hard work is being recognized, it just fuels that motivation even more.
Oh, 100%. It's like that growth mindset, right? We talk about it with students all the time, but it's so important for us as educators to have that too.
Absolutely. When teachers feel supported and empowered to, take risks, to try new things, that's when the real magic happens.
That's what it's all about. So I guess if there's one key takeaway I want our listeners to walk away with today, it's that recalibrating your PLCs, it's not just about, like I said, tweaking a meeting here or there.
Right.
It's about creating this culture of continuous improvement in your school.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Yes.
But with the right support, the right mindset, and a whole lot of enthusiasm, your PLCs can be amazing.
They can be. And on that note, that is another deep dive. Successfully navigated.
We did it.
We explored those ins and outs of recalibrating PLCs, got some amazing advice from our friends over at Juniper Consulting.
They're the best.
And hopefully left you feeling ready to, get out there and transform those PLCs.
Take action.
Exactly. And remember, even those small changes, those little tweaks, they can make a world of difference. So be the PLC champion that your school needs.
Your school deserves it.
Until next time, happy collaborating, everyone.